coming to the table. This time I am honored and happy to have Carl-Erik Vesterager as my guest. And Carl-Erik is a fellow Dane, and he's the vice president of a technology company in Denmark and Scandinavia called KMD. And Carl-Erik, thank you ever so much for taking out some time. I know it's evening your time in Europe right now, so I appreciate you taking out the time, and I'm so happy you wanted to join me on the show. I've known Carl-Erik for some years. Carl-Erik actually participated in our master program on negotiation, and Carl-Erik was a person that kind of stood out and had a very specific and unique interest in negotiation. So for that and many, many other reasons, I've invited you, Carl-Erik. So thank you so much for being here. Could you just introduce yourself and the organization very briefly for our audience?
Sure. As you said, my name is Carl-Erik Vesterager. I work for a Danish company called KMD. I've worked here for the last 13 years. We help Denmark gain the position that Denmark has right now as one of the most digitized countries in the world. And we worked as a company on that for the last 14 years. Right now, I'm working, as you said, as a vice president within our utility business, delivering software solutions to utility companies in Denmark and Scandinavia. We are, at the moment, in KMD, a bit more than 3,000 employees and have a revenue of about 5 billion Danish crowns.
Right.
We are by far the largest Danish IT software company.
Right. What's the reason that you have an interest in this field, and how do you see negotiation in connection with your work with your clients? And it could basically be Carl-Erik negotiations internally and externally.
Negotiation for me is an intricate part of everyday business, both as a manager and doing business with our customers. It's an intricate part of being successful as a manager. When you work with leaders and employees, it's also an intricate part of succeeding with your customers, not only delivering functionalities at a certain price, but actually delivering value for our customers' business. Extracting that value is a very, very important part of doing business today. And extracting that value, negotiation is a central and very important part.
Right. Carl-Erik, in general, I know you've been a manager for years now. Do you find that leaders or managers are better negotiators than the staff?
Actually, I would hope to say yes. I'm not sure, but I think being successful or delivering success and value to the company that you represent, in doing that, you have to be a good negotiator. You have to make a difference as a manager every day and every week and every year. And doing that, if you're not a competent negotiator, you're not able to extract and add value as much as you can if you're not a competent negotiator.
Right. Now, a difficult question, Carl-Erik, and we're generalizing, obviously, but do you find we're good at it? Not only you and me, but people in general. So I'm talking about the staff at KMD and your clients and the world as a whole.
I think it depends on the situation. I think a lot of people are actually very, very good negotiators in their everyday life, because they know if they don't negotiate in a trustful and a way that actually add values both to your spouse and to your family and to your friends, then you won't be a very good husband, or wife, or friend.
Right.
But I think some understand and some don't understand that negotiation is not only getting the best result for yourself.
Right.
And unfortunately, there's still people doing business only for themselves and not gaining value both for the customer and for you as a company.
Right.
Some of us have scars from hard negotiations, and those scars actually still creep in sometimes when you negotiate with people. So I think it's very different. I also meet very, very, very good negotiators every day in business, and they bring more value to the table, and they also bring, they enable us doing business in a better and more valuable way.
Right. Now, Carl-Erik, just getting back to what you said, that some negotiators today, thank God not all, but some negotiators today are still focused on winning for themselves and perhaps even winning at the expense of the counterpart. What we call zero sum, obviously, in negotiation. You shouldn't name any names, obviously, but do you find clients coming to you and your company that actually are approaching negotiation in a complete zero sum way?
Often, yes.
Okay.
Often. I don't know why, but it seems that some managers actually think that to get the best out of the situation for the organization they represent, they have to win on the cost of the counterpart.
Right.
That kind of winning is at best relevant on the short term. So yes, it happens, as you say. We still see negotiators negotiating in a zero sum way.
Right.
But I also see increasingly that managers understand that you have to support a trustful and transparent negotiation that actually enables values on both sides.
Right. Right. Now, Carl-Erik, I know that you have to work, since you're working a lot with governments and local governments, you have to work under the clauses and the rules of the tender regulation within European unions. Sometimes I meet clients that tells me that limits their ability to negotiate because they basically have to obey the rules of tendering. How's your view on that, implementing negotiation and work with the tender?
I think, as you said, of course, as a company, KMD needs to abide to the regulation that we actually are doing business under. And that's not up for discussion. Even though we, of course, sometimes would prefer being able to negotiate with our clients or customers, we need to abide to those regulations. Fortunately, the EU are increasingly enabling new forms of tendering that actually enables negotiation within specific frames and specific regulations. That I find as a very positive thing, and we see it more and more in public tenders. It enables reducing the risk and increasing the value in the contracts from the beginning, and not during the project or afterwards.
Right.
But it's not up for discussion whether we abide to the rules or the regulations. Yeah.
Of course not. Well, what I sometimes find, Carl-Erik, when I'm working with the counterpart to your company, is that sometimes they could use tender with negotiation, which is fully allowed during or under the European Union law today, but they choose not to. And I'm often wondering why. So my question to you would be, do you think they are afraid of using negotiation as part of the tendering process because they're not used to it, so they would rather just sit there and look at the spreadsheet and do the comparison that way, or could there be another reason?
I think using this is my guess, because of course I'm not there on the other side of the table and of the tender, but I would think that for some of our clients, for some of our customers, using the traditional tender methodology is easier when documenting the decision. It's easier for them to go through the process without the negotiation part. And to be frank, it's not inexpensive when they do tender buy with negotiation. That adds cost to the purchasing process.
Sure, I understand that. World Economic Forum recently did a study where they claimed that negotiation is the fifth most important skill, regardless what job you are holding. Even me, breathing and living negotiation, even me, I was surprised about this study that they claimed that it was the fifth most important skill. How do you view that study and that outcome of that study, Carl-Erik? Is that something you recognize, or would you say that they exaggerate?
I haven't read the exact study that you're talking about. So, in my view, negotiation is very, very important as a skill, both as a private person and as a person in business. If you don't allow or spend time and effort on negotiation, both in your private life, of course, and also with customers, then mostly you only end up with the result that's actually on the paper from the beginning, and
Right.
most of the times that's not even near the amount of value that you can create if you start negotiating.
Right.
And I see more and more that as we move into an increasing age of technology and more complex and intelligent technologies come into business everyday life. If you're not able as a human being to add value, then you'll actually be out of business. You'll be competing with computers that do the job better in a few years.
Sure. I absolutely agree with you. That actually leads me on to the next question. I think that's very relevant to ask you because it's about technology. Obviously, we are in a revolution technology-wise. We have AI coming in. We have different systems coming in. And I had to talk to expert companies and organizations worldwide that claims that just 10, 15 years from now, we will have technology that will handle negotiation better than you and I, Carl-Erik. So they actually claim that 10, 15 years from now, your company would have a system that would be negotiating with the system with your clients. And those two systems would actually come out with a better result than the negotiation you would handle with your client. What's your view on that claim?
As always, it's really difficult to predict how technology forms the world, even in 5 years or 10 years. For me, there's no discussion that technology will enable negotiations both on a more objective level, but also enable us in identifying new values, new parameters to negotiate on. Whether they will actually be able to do it without human interaction, that's probably possible. We see quite a few negotiations done already by robots on the stock markets and continuously in everyday life when you use web shops or when you use algorithm-based purchasing processes. So actually, I think it's already a part of how we do business now. But I also think that as human beings, we need to move with the technology. We need to make technology that enable us and not just regulates us or reduces us to pawns in a game. So we need to use the technology in a way that adds value to the situation and to the business that we actually do. And that kind of technology, I hope, will be enabling us in 10 or 15 years. Whether they do all the negotiations without a human touch, that remains to be seen. I won't say no, I won't say yes, because it's by experience, that's one of the most difficult discussions to have.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now, one of my research field within the science of negotiation is trust. And a lot of studies claim that trust has dropped in general in the last 20 years. So we have less trust towards each other today than we did 20 years ago. Complicated question really for you, Carl-Erik. How do you establish trust? When you start a conversation with a client, how do you make sure that trust is at a sufficient or even a solid good level?
Mm. As a fellow Dane, you know that in the Nordics and also in Denmark, we have very, very high trust levels in our society, and we have very high trust levels to foreigners that we meet every day. In that respect, trust is not really an issue that we see hindering negotiations or great results doing business. Whether it's reducing in Denmark or increasing in Denmark, it's always difficult to evaluate, because you often see newspapers and headlines wanting to be clickbaits, and that actually takes the agenda for all the good things that's going on in our societies. I think that we'll see parts of our society being more distrustful, unfortunately. I hope that we'll see most of our society moving in a more and more trustful way. Also because, just returning to technology, getting away with mistrustful or unethical businesses or ways of doing your business is getting increasingly difficult.
Sure. Okay. Carl-Erik, how do you make sure that your staff is adequately prepared for negotiations? Are you doing kind of a practice run before your staff is out negotiating? Are you doing internal training? How do you make sure that your staff have the necessary tools?
As I have quite a few employees, I think the best tool that, and they are engaged in a multiple case scenario every day, negotiating with customers every day. I think the best tool I have is actually training. It's training, and when we have difficult negotiations, we also prepare together those kind of negotiations. But mainly, my tool as a manager is training and enabling my employees to be better negotiators in all the cases they work on every day.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one of my studies showed, and it's a very simple study and outcome really, it showed that if we enjoy and like negotiation, we are better at it, which is really not a surprise, because you and I as human beings tend to be better at something that we like. So if you look at your staff, or even your clients, or even the corporation you're in, would you say that people in generally likes negotiation, or is it something that they are neutral about, or do you even see some people who dislike to be involved in negotiation?
I see both situations. I see quite a few of my employees and also quite a few of my customers that actually enjoy the process of negotiation. It's kind of a sport for them, and as it is a sport, they of course need to train it. Whether you play golf, tennis, or prefer negotiation as a hobby, you get better at the more you practice, and also practicing in dry runs without actually cases, but trying and training those kind of negotiations to improve your skills. I think I also see employees that and also managers that actually don't enjoy negotiating. They see it as a confrontation, and it's not a part of their everyday business life that actually improve the quality of the job. We are working on that every day, and I think the more they actually get competences on negotiation, the more they enjoy it. It's often a matter of that they are not sure how to do it, or they're not they haven't received much training and negotiation.
Right. So do you find, as a manager, Carl-Erik, that the level of training in negotiation equals whether you like or dislike it? So if you have more training, there's a tendency you like it more?
In my view, yes. I think it's a bit like, as we talked about before, playing golf or tennis. Having a skill improves the quality of actually doing the sport. It's the same for negotiation. Having the skill or the training for actually doing negotiations and having the framework to do it in enables you as a negotiator, and also enables you to be in that situation. It takes courage to be in the negotiation and not finishing the negotiation as fast as possible and just moving on. So yeah, I think training and also a respect as management for that negotiation is a process. It takes time and investment. I think that enables those employees.
Right. One thing we often find, Carl-Erik, is that human beings are emotional animals. We are emotional species, and that means that we react with emotions when we are involved in negotiation. Have you ever been in a negotiation yourself where you felt that you got emotional, that you felt some kind of stress? And if yes, how do you handle that as a professional negotiator?
I quite often find that if you are negotiating things that are difficult for the customer, where they are hardly pressed by their own organization, or if you negotiate contracts or situation where the customer or your own company are in some kind of or have some kind of issue in the situation, that often brings emotions to the table, both on my side and on the customer side. So for me, it's not uncommon to see, or even as a negotiator, having emotions in the negotiation situation. I think the best tool I have is taking a break. That's the very best tool I have when emotions are high. I think also when I know that the negotiation will be emotional for either part, starting the negotiation with setting up the parameters, making it okay to take a break, and agreeing on before we start the negotiation that if either part has to take a break, it's okay, it's not a problem. I think, yeah, breaks is the best tool, absolutely, when emotions are high.
Right. Have you found yourself in a negotiation where you saw that the counterpart reacted emotionally or you reacted emotionally?
Yes. Quite a few, yeah.
Okay. Right.
Especially when the stakes are high for you as a company or for the customer. It's natural that emotions are your own reaction or part of your customer's reaction.
Okay. Now, Carl-Erik, just to wrap up, if you should give one important advice to our audience on negotiation and the whole science of negotiation, what would be the key advice that you would offer to everybody around you?
I think the key advice is, when you negotiate and when you have finished either a specific negotiation in a continuous process of negotiations, or a specific negotiation that only happens once, allow yourself and your colleagues to debrief.
Okay.
Spend 5, 10, 15 minutes in the car when you return, debriefing each other. What happened? How did it go? Did we actually get the result? Did we enable a situation where our customer, we as a company, added value for both parties? Did we support trust and transparency between the parties? Did we actually enable and secure high morals and trust in both parties that we can build on continuously? I think the ability and also allowing the debriefing and learning and supporting that kind of activity is I think actually the best tool.
Oh, well, wonderful. I think that sounds like a great tool. I actually have one more question that I've been wondering about, Carl-Erik, and perhaps you could help us out over here, because you've probably been following the negotiation going on between the presidents and the Democrats on the wall. How should we solve that here in the U.S., Carl-Erik?
That's a very political question, and I don't know whether, as a European, I should actually involve me or my company or my country in that kind of conflict. Yeah, I'm not sure whether I can actually help you solve that problem.
It's a very tricky one, isn't it? And I mean, it symbolizes very often in negotiations that you are emotional again, because both parties are having a position, and stepping down from that position would make you lose face, and that's something that you see often in negotiations. So that's a tricky one. Carl-Erik, anything you want to add? Anything that we didn't cover so far?
I think no. I mostly think that as we talked about, I think that allowing yourself to quote unquote play negotiation sometimes, actually allowing yourself to look back or look forward to a negotiation and play the situation through. I think that's something that a lot of us could spend a bit more time on in the everyday ground of things. Then sometimes time is an issue, and setting aside time for preparing, getting ready, playing out the situation, and debriefing is sometimes something that we do not prioritize in the business that we do. And I think that should be a New Year's resolution for me as well as my employees.
Carl-Erik, you're married and you've got twins, right?
Yeah, well, I got 2 kids. Yeah.
Yeah. How are those negotiations going at home? Are you coming out successfully, especially with the?
Well, another discussion or issue we at the moment have in our family regarding the years is the company or the game called Fortnite. I had 2 boys playing Fortnite, and let me tell you, sometimes it gives us a bit of everyday negotiation in the privacy of our home. Yeah. So yes, negotiation is also a part of my family life. Of course it is.
Yeah, wonderful. Carl-Erik, thank you ever so much for taking out time. I know it's evening, as I said earlier, for you. I appreciate your time. It was really useful. And I'm sure our audience will appreciate your thoughts and experiences within the art and science of negotiation. So thank you ever so much, Carl-Erik.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.